They say every rejection is just redirection. But when your boss humiliates you in front of the whole team, it doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like the end. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and this is how I turned my lowest moment into the best thing that ever happened to me. Would you have walked away or fought for your worth? If you've ever felt overlooked or rejected at work, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story.
I used to think I was lucky to work at Novatech. The office was sleek, the projects were exciting, and the team was full of smart, ambitious people. I'd been there for 3 years, working my way up from junior analyst to project lead. I thought I was finally on the path to something big. But then there was Ethan Cross, my boss. On the surface, he was everything a company could want: charming, sharp, and always ready with a joke in meetings. But behind closed doors, he was a different person. He played favorites, took credit for other people's work, and made sure everyone knew who was in charge. If you crossed him, you were done. I learned that the hard way. It started with a promotion I'd been working toward for months. I'd led a major project, pulled late nights, and even skipped vacations to make sure everything was perfect. My team hit every target, and the client was thrilled. I thought this was my moment. The day of the announcement, Ethan called a team meeting. Everyone gathered in the glass-walled conference room, buzzing with excitement. I could feel my heart pounding as he started to speak. "I want to recognize someone who's gone above and beyond this quarter," he said, glancing around the room. For a split second, I thought he was talking about me. But then he smiled at Megan, a new hire who'd barely been on the project. "Megan, your fresh ideas have really made a difference. Congratulations on your promotion." The room erupted in polite applause. I sat there stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Megan looked just as surprised as I was. Ethan didn't even look at me. After the meeting, I tried to talk to him. "Ethan, can we discuss the promotion decision?" I thought. He cut me off with a smirk. "Lauren, you're good, but you're not leadership material. Maybe next time if you work on your attitude." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had given everything to this job, and in one sentence, he dismissed it all. Worse, he'd done it in front of everyone. That afternoon, the whisper started. "Did you see Lauren's face? I heard Ethan said she's not a team player." My confidence crumbled. I started second-guessing every decision, every email, and every conversation. But the worst part? Ethan started piling more work on me. Projects no one else wanted, late-night deadlines, impossible expectations. And every time I delivered, he found a way to take the credit or point out something I'd missed. I went home every night exhausted, replaying his words in my head. "You're not leadership material." Was he right? Had I been fooling myself this whole time? But deep down, I knew I deserved better. I just didn't know how to prove it yet. But what I didn't realize was that Ethan's rejection would be the push I needed to finally take control of my own story and get the last laugh.
What I didn't realize was that Ethan's rejection would be the push I needed to finally take control of my own story and get the last laugh. The days after that meeting felt like walking through a fog. I'd always prided myself on being resilient, but Ethan's words echoed in my mind every time I opened my laptop. "You're not leadership material." It was like a stain I couldn't scrub out no matter how hard I worked. At first, I tried to prove him wrong. I doubled down on my projects, volunteered for every extra task, and even started coming in early just to get a head start. But the more I did, the more invisible I felt. Ethan barely acknowledged my efforts. When I sent him updates, he replied with one-word answers, if he replied at all. Meanwhile, Megan, the new project lead, was struggling. She was smart, but she didn't know the team or the clients. She started coming to me for help, asking questions about processes and deadlines. I wanted to be supportive, but every time I helped her, it felt like I was digging my own grave, making her look good while I faded further into the background. The office gossip didn't help. People whispered about how I'd been passed over, how maybe I wasn't as good as everyone thought. Some coworkers avoided me, afraid to get on Ethan's bad side. Others offered awkward sympathy, which only made me feel worse. One night after another long day, I called my best friend Tara. She listened as I vented, then said something that stuck with me. "Lauren, you can't let one person's opinion define you. If they can't see your value, maybe it's time to find someone who will." That idea rattled around in my head for days. I'd always been loyal to Novatech, but what was I really getting in return? More work, less recognition, and a boss who seemed determined to keep me in my place. Then something happened that changed everything. I was working late, again, when I overheard Ethan on the phone in his office. The door was slightly open and his voice carried into the hallway. "Yeah, I gave the promotion to Megan. Lauren's too ambitious for her own good. She'd be a threat if she ever got real power." A threat? I felt a strange mix of anger and pride. So that was it. Ethan didn't want me to move up because he was afraid I would outshine him. That night, I started updating my resume. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a future outside Novatech. I reached out to a few old colleagues on LinkedIn just to catch up. To my surprise, one of them, Priya, messaged me back almost immediately. "Lauren, I was just thinking about you. We have an opening at my company, senior project manager. You'd be perfect for it." I hesitated. Was I really ready to leave everything behind? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had nothing to lose. I set up a coffee meeting with Priya for the following week. Back at Novatech, things only got worse. Ethan started nitpicking my work, CCing upper management on every email, and even blaming me for mistakes that weren't mine. It was like he wanted to push me out without actually firing me. But I kept my head down and did my job. I started documenting everything. Every unfair comment, every time he took credit for my work, every time he set me up to fail. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but it made me feel a little less powerless. The coffee meeting with Priya was a breath of fresh air. Her company, Bright Path Solutions, was growing fast and valued innovation. She introduced me to her boss, who was impressed with my experience and leadership on big projects. They asked me to come in for a formal interview. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Maybe Tara was right. Maybe I just needed to find the right place to shine. But as I started the interview process, Ethan seemed to sense something had changed. He called me into his office one afternoon, closing the door behind me. "I've noticed you've been distracted lately, Lauren. Is there something you want to tell me?" I looked him in the eye, feeling a surge of confidence I hadn't felt in a long time. "No, Ethan, I'm just focused on doing my job." He narrowed his eyes, but let it go. I could tell he didn't trust me, and for once, I didn't care. A week later, I got the call from Bright Path. They wanted to offer me the senior project manager position, with a salary that was 30% higher than what I was making at Novatech. I could barely believe it. But before I could accept, I had one more thing to do. I realized I had a choice: quietly slip away, or finally stand up for myself and show Ethan and everyone else what I was really capable of.
I stared at the offer letter from Bright Path Solutions, my heart pounding. It was more than just a job. It was validation, proof that I was worth more than Ethan's dismissive words and Novatech's empty promises. But as much as I wanted to accept and move on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed closure. I needed to reclaim my story, not just for me, but for everyone who'd ever been made to feel small by someone like Ethan. I spent the weekend thinking about how to leave. Should I just hand in my resignation and disappear? Or should I make sure Ethan and the rest of the team knew exactly why I was leaving? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wanted my exit to mean something. I wanted to leave a mark. On Monday morning, I walked into the office with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. I wore my favorite blazer, the one I'd bought for the promotion I never got. I greeted my coworkers with a smile, even the ones who'd avoided me since the team meeting. I could feel Ethan watching me from his glass office, trying to figure out what had changed. I spent the morning tying up loose ends, finishing reports, organizing files, and making sure my team had everything they needed. I even helped Megan with a tricky client issue, knowing she'd be on her own soon. She thanked me quietly, her eyes full of gratitude, and maybe a little guilt. At lunch, I sent an email to HR and Ethan, requesting a meeting at the end of the day. The subject line was simple: resignation and transition plan. Within minutes, Ethan replied, "See me in my office at 4 p.m. The hours crawled by. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, but when the time came, I didn't need a script. I walked into his office, closed the door, and handed him my resignation letter. He barely glanced at it. "So, you're quitting." I can't say I'm surprised. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "I'm leaving because I've outgrown this place, and because I refuse to work for someone who can't recognize talent unless it benefits him." He smirked, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You think you'll do better elsewhere?" I smiled. "I know I will. In fact, I've already accepted a senior project manager position at BrightPath Solutions. They value leadership, innovation, and integrity. Everything you said I lacked." For a moment, Ethan was speechless. Then he tried to recover. "Well, good luck. You'll find it's not as easy as you think out there." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Maybe not, but at least I'll be working for people who want me to succeed, not fail." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years, but I wasn't done yet. I sent a farewell email to the team, not the usual bland goodbye, but a heartfelt message, thanking them for their support, sharing what I'd learned, and encouraging them to stand up for themselves too. I didn't mention Ethan by name, but everyone knew who I meant when I wrote, "Never let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Your value isn't defined by someone else's opinion." The responses poured in. Some were surprised, others supportive. A few even confided that they'd felt the same way, overlooked, undervalued, and ready for a change. Megan sent me a private message. "Thank you for everything, Lauren. I wish I'd spoken up sooner." That night, I celebrated with Tara and Priya. We toasted to new beginnings, to knowing our worth, and to never settling for less than we deserve. But the real turning point came a few weeks later, after I'd settled into my new role at BrightPath. I was leading a major project, working with a team that respected and challenged me. My ideas were heard, my work was valued, and for the first time in a long time, I felt excited to go to work every day. Then, out of the blue, I got a LinkedIn message from an old Novatech colleague. "Did you hear? Ethan's in trouble. Upper management found out he was taking credit for other people's work. There's an investigation." I couldn't help but smile. Karma, it seems, had finally caught up with him. But the best part? BrightPath had just landed a huge contract, with Novatech as the client. I was put in charge of the project, which meant I'd be working directly with my old company, and inevitably, with Ethan. The first meeting was surreal. Ethan joined the video call, his face tight and professional. He tried to act like nothing had happened, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes when he realized I was leading the project. I welcomed him warmly, outlined the project goals, and made it clear that BrightPath was setting the terms. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted, and everyone knew it. I'd gone from being rejected and humiliated to calling the shots, and Ethan had no choice but to play by my rules. If you're finding this story relatable, hit the like button and subscribe for more true office dramas and career comebacks. The first project meeting with Novatech was a moment I'd secretly dreamed about but never thought would actually happen. I logged into the video call early, reviewing my notes and making sure every detail was perfect. My new team at BrightPath was sharp, supportive, and ready to impress. I could feel the energy in the room, even through the screen. When the Novatech team joined, I saw a few familiar faces. Some looked surprised to see me leading the call. Others smiled, clearly happy for me. And then there was Ethan. He tried to keep his expression neutral, but I could see the tension in his jaw and the way he avoided meeting my eyes. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice steady and confident. "I'm Lauren Mitchell, Senior Project Manager at BrightPath. We're excited to partner with Novatech on this initiative." Ethan cleared his throat. "Thank you, Lauren. We're looking forward to working with you and your team." The meeting went smoothly, at least on the surface. I outlined the project plan, set clear expectations, and made it clear that BrightPath would be leading every step. Ethan tried to interject a few times, but I handled his questions with professionalism and poise. Every time he tried to take control, I redirected the conversation back to the agenda. After the call, my inbox filled with messages from my new team. "You crushed it. That was amazing, Lauren. You made it look easy." I felt a surge of pride, not just because I'd impressed my colleagues, but because I'd finally proven to myself and to Ethan that I was more than capable. But the real showdown came a few weeks later during an in-person project review at Novatech's headquarters. Walking into that building again felt surreal. The same glass walls, the same buzzing energy, but this time I was a guest, not an employee, and I was in charge. Ethan greeted me in the lobby, his smile tight. "Welcome back, Lauren." "Thank you, Ethan. It's good to see you." I replied with his politeness, with a confidence I'd never shown before. The review meeting was packed. Executives from both companies, project leads, and even a few of my old coworkers were there. I led the presentation, walking everyone through the progress, challenges, and next steps. I could see people nodding, taking notes, and genuinely engaged. Ethan tried to interject a few times, but I handled his questions with professionalism and poise. Every time he tried to take control, I redirected the conversation back to the agenda. After the meeting, several Novatech employees pulled me aside. "We miss working with you, Lauren. You always had the best ideas. It's not the same without you." Their words meant more than they knew. But the most satisfying moment came when Ethan approached me privately. He looked tired, the confident facade slipping just a bit. "You did well today," he said quietly. "BrightPath is lucky to have you." I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "Thank you, Ethan. I hope you remember that the next time you're deciding who deserves a chance." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw something almost like regret in his eyes. As I left the building, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd faced my biggest critic, stood my ground, and come out stronger. I realized that the real victory wasn't just the new job or the bigger salary. It was knowing my worth and refusing to let anyone take it from me again. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, I got a call from Novatech's HR department. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to consult on a new leadership training program, one that was designed to prevent the very kind of toxic management I'd experienced. They'd heard about my success at BrightPath and wanted my input. I couldn't help but smile. The company that once rejected me was now asking for my expertise. I had gone from being dismissed and humiliated to being sought after for my leadership, and the best part was, I'd done it all on my own terms.
Saying yes to Novatech's HR felt like closing a circle I never thought I'd complete. I agreed to consult on their new leadership program, but I set my own terms. Flexible hours, a generous consulting fee, and most importantly, the freedom to speak honestly about what real leadership looks like. It was more than a job. It was a chance to help change the culture that had once made me feel so small. The first workshop I led was packed. Managers, team leads, and even a few executives filled the room, notebooks in hand. I started by sharing my story. Not as a victim, but as someone who'd learned the hard way what happens when talent is ignored and voices are silenced. I talked about the importance of recognizing potential and of building people up instead of tearing them down. I shared how a single act of rejection had pushed me to grow, to find my voice, and to demand better, not just for myself, but for everyone around me. After the session, people lined up to talk. Some thanked me for my honesty. Others shared their own stories of being overlooked or dismissed. A few even admitted they'd made mistakes as managers and wanted to do better. It was humbling, and it made me realize just how many people needed to hear that they weren't alone. Meanwhile, my life at BrightPath was thriving. I was leading bigger projects, mentoring new hires, and finally feeling like I was exactly where I belonged. My salary was higher than I'd ever imagined, but the real reward was the respect and trust I'd earned from my team. Tara and Priya celebrated every win with me, reminding me how far I'd come. "Remember when you thought you'd never get out of Novatech?" Tara laughed one night over dinner. "Look at you now, teaching them how to be better." Even Megan, the new project lead at Novatech, reached out. She told me she'd struggled under Ethan's management too, and that my story had inspired her to speak up for herself. She wrote, "You showed me it's okay to want more. Thank you for paving the way." As for Ethan, I heard he was eventually moved to a less visible role. The investigation into his management style had uncovered more than just my story. It turned out I wasn't the only one he'd tried to hold back. In the end, his reputation never fully recovered. Part of me felt sorry for him, but mostly I hoped he'd learned something about the cost of underestimating people. Looking back, I realized that getting rejected by my boss was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to see my own value, to take risks, and to build a life and career on my own terms. I learned that sometimes the people who try to hold you back are just afraid of what you might become if you're allowed to shine. So, if you're watching this and you've ever been rejected, overlooked, or made to feel like you're not enough, I hope my story gives you hope. You are not defined by someone else's opinion. Your worth isn't measured by a single job, a single boss, or a single setback. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. It's laughing all the way to your own success, knowing you did it with integrity, courage, and a little bit of faith in yourself. So what about you? Have you ever been rejected only to come back stronger? Would you have stayed and fought, or walked away to find something better? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, the last laugh is always the sweetest, especially when it's yours.
If this story inspired you, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more real-life workplace stories.